Hi there, this is John Fairhurst with my review of Keith Roberts' 1967 novel Pavane. The cover for this review is from the Millennium Science Fiction Masterworks edition from 2000 and was created by Jim Burns. This novel is often considered an alternate history tale, but there are some reasons to consider it to be a post-catastrophic, far-future, near-identical repeat of a similar period from the past. If you've read the book, put your thoughts down in the comments. So why would one think that it's an alternate history in the first place? This is mainly down to the prologue, which introduces us to a dying queen successfully struck down by an assassin's bullet that causes chaos in a period of history where an outside power has its sights on the throne of England. We see nothing of the invasion itself or the intervening period between this prologue and the opening story, and although I'm going to treat this as a single story, the tales were actually published as individual stories. The Lady Margaret, published in 1966's April Impulse, is that opening story, and is the tale of a haulier who runs a steam road locomotive hauling a train of wagons across southern England in the year of our Lord 1967. Not our version of that year, of course, nor anything resembling it. In this story, we are introduced to the haulage firm of Strange and Son and its new owner, Jessie, as he prepares for the last run of the season in the land engine, the Lady Margaret. The land engines and the trains they haul are massive steam engines and their carriages, running on the rough roads of this near medieval England. One of the biggest drivers of our England being the lead in the Industrial Revolution was the fact that the country was effectively a single tariff zone. But we learn here that the individual towns along the Lady Margaret's route charge Jessie entry. There's no particular plot to this tale until fairly near the end, where Jessie asks for the hand in marriage of one of the innkeepers along his route, but is refused in rather a direct manner. He also meets an old friend in what feels like a coincidental meeting, but one always has to be aware of the routiers, bands of highwaymen preying on travelling between the walled and defended settlements. The Signaller is the second story being published in March 1966's edition of Impulse. This tells the tale of a young man who had been apprenticed to the Guild of Signallers, those mysterious men who ran the large signalling towers that sent messages from one end of the land to the other. And even here, it's made clear that these are continental in scale. It's this story that introduces an element of the fantastic into the mix. Rather unusually, perhaps, we meet our protagonist as he's in the process of dying, but we quickly drop back into the start of Rafe Bigland's early fascination with the semaphore towers, first noticed by the sergeant of the local tower, where he finds the young Rafe watching the local tower as it manoeuvres its arms in the secret language of the Guild. We're then treated to Rafe's progression through the Guild and its arcane skills, then his first individual posting and his survival through a deadly winter, trying to find things to do during the freezing winter weather while staying alert for signals coming through from the other towers in the chain. One of those activities was taking walks in the snowy waste, and it's this that leads to his downfall when he's attacked by a catamount, badly wounding him. This should have been the end of him, but even though he was badly injured, he drove the creature away before passing out himself. When he came to once more, he found himself back in the signaller's hut with a pot simmering on a fire he hadn't set. Looking round, he finds a young girl dressed in a summer dress in defiance of the harsh winter and a sun-browned skin, but it was the pointed ears that proved her fey origins. As the story continues, we hear a tale of the old world, and Rafe seems to make a recovery, following his saviour out into the wild lands. But we are treated to a final scene of his guild masters going to the station to find Rafe's dead body. The White Boat is the third story, which was originally published in the New World's December 1966 edition. Personally, I found this the weakest tale in the collection. Teenage Becky was rebelling against her oncoming fate of being a wife and mother, and wanted to know the secrets of the titular white boat that visited her seaside village at apparently random times. It was during one of these visits that her curiosity overwhelmed her common sense, aided by her father's contempt of her selling most of her catch to the sailors aboard the Eldritch ship, where she finds a less than welcoming ambience when she actually joins the crew. After a period of time sailing around the stormy seas, Becky is returned home, and after a brief period of being thanked for, she finds the conformity unbearable, and with the church army planning on destroying the white boat, Becky finds it better to sacrifice herself to save the white boat than to continue living what would essentially be a lie. Brother John is the next tale, first published in the March 1966 edition of Impulse. Again, this isn't a pleasant read. The titular Brother John is a member of a particularly technologically minded order of monks, though this doesn't really extend much, as far as we see, beyond being master princes, though John himself hasn't yet risen to those dizzying heights. His technical proficiency has, however, led him to being seconded to the Bishop of London's Special Commission to examine the work of a member of the Inquisition, and it's what he sees there that drives the young monk into a rage, though not one that is directly targeting the church, but one that harkens back to the old ones, which might be even less tolerated by the church. And John soon finds himself with an ever-increasing price on his head. Eventually, John and his followers are brought to battle by the church forces, and when it looks like John will be captured, he escapes out to sea, where it's assumed he dies. Or does he? Lords and Ladies is story number 5 and was published in the June 1966 edition of Impulse. In this story, we meet Jesse Strange for the final time as he lies on his deathbed, and his niece Margaret sits in on the exhortations of the local priest as he tries to drive out the demon infesting her uncle. During this death watch, Margaret flicks through memories of her life and interactions with her ailing uncle before returning to the present. As a scion of a wealthy family, Margaret was of interest to many young and not so young men, but it was the Lord of Corfe Castle that took her eye and her maidenhead. But thanks to the disparities in their stations, a full marriage was out of the question. Again, we get to see a touch of the old magic briefly as Margaret contemplates her future. Corfe Gate is the 6th tale and was published in the July 1966 edition of Impulse. In this tale, the mistress of Corfe Castle takes on the power of the church, with both forces being emboldened by the absence of the English king as he travels to his American colonies. Lady Eleanor has a stubborn nature inherited from her grandmother and has determined to breach the church's edicts on the forbidden technologies for the benefit of her subjects. The church, in its turn, could not take such defiance to its authority and sent a besieging force against the castle. Lady Eleanor and the seneschal had already taken account of this possibility, though, and settled in for a long siege. Seeing her open defiance and survival, at least initially, other lords set out their own defiance of the church, leaving much of the country in turmoil. This story is an indication of hidden secrets lying what was hidden in the tower, accessible only by the seneschal, a device that appeared to do little more than glow in the dark of the room as the man spoke into it. The attack on Lady Eleanor has raised the whole country against the imposing church troops, but somehow the King of England has been informed of the events in his homeland and made it back in time to enforce a peace on his warring land. Coda is the 7th and final tale in the book, being written just for the collection, as it is set a few generations after Corfe Gate. In this tale, we learn that soon after the events of Corfe Gate, the church has read the writing on the wall and the increasing number of revolts against its autocratic rule, leading it to open up its archives and improve the lives of the citizens. This tale opens with the arrival of a tourist at the remains of Corfe Castle, and he reads a letter written by an ancestor about the true purpose of the church's moratorium on technology. And it's largely this letter that makes me feel that the timeline of Pavane is a post-apocalypse near repeat of ancient history. though the coda is the only place that this prehistory is really hinted at. Anyway, one of the best things about the tales in these books is now how Robert uses the weather to fill in the atmosphere of the story, cold and crisp in the original story and stormy throughout the main stories, with flashes of nice weather when the characters' lives are going well. Only the coda is really permanently set in a sunny environment. Anyway, that's it. Thanks for listening. Please subscribe, comment, and if you haven't already, subscribe. Links to the books on Amazon.com and Amazon.co.uk can be found in the video description, which will earn me a small commission with no extra cost to you. Thank you and goodbye again.